Hi, today we're doing lesson 10.7 in literature and comprehension. So it's Explore the Eagle on the Moon. This is a nonfiction magazine article that we had to read. So now I'm just going to ask the question. It says to read aloud pages 26 to 29. Let's do that first, 26 to 29. Okay, so here's page 26. Let's start from here. Meet the astronauts. No one had ever landed on the moon before. No one knew if it could even be done. But if Americans wanted to get to the moon, they had to start sending more men to space. They needed the best men for the job. They needed expert pilot like Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Mike Collins. Neil and Buzz flew warplanes. Mike was a test pilot. Neil was a test pilot too. They tested fast new jet planes. Okay, let's look at the next page. Getting ready. An astronaut's job is to go to space. So the new astronauts went to space. They flew in orbit around the Earth. Neil went to space. Buzz went to space. Mike went to space too. In 1968, 7 years after the president's promise, the men got exciting news. They had been picked for a special mission. They were going to the moon. The astronauts got ready for their big trip. There was a lot to do. They practiced using spaceship controls. They got new spacesuits. They did science experiments. The men trained hard for more than a year. Okay, let's look at the question. Did you hear a year mentioned on page 28? Let's look at page 28. Yes, I do see a year mentioned here. 1968, so that must be the year mentioned. Based on what we've read so far, what happened first? Did the Russians send a man into space? Or did the American astronauts get picked to go to the moon? Now, I would like you to pause the video and try answering this on your own, and then playing the video again to listen to the answer. I'm assuming you've given it a go, so let's see what the answer is. Let's take a look at the answer. So we're back to page number 25, all the way to the beginning of the article. Here we see, it says here, right in the first page, the Russians sent a man to space first. So this is what happened first. And then later on, so as you can see, it's only later on page 28 that the astronauts get picked to go to the moon, okay, for a special mission. Well, the special mission was going to the moon. Now it asks to read aloud pages 30 and 31. Let's read aloud pages 30 and 31. Oh, too far. Okay. Blast off! At last the day came. It was July 16, 1969. The three astronauts climbed into a big spaceship. 3, 2, 1, blast off! At 9:32 a.m., a rocket roared. The spaceship shot into the air. People cheered. The men were on their way to the moon. From space, the men saw the Earth. It looked like a tiny blue and white marble. You can see here, from space, the Earth looked like a tiny blue and white marble. The spaceship flew very fast, but it took a long time to reach the moon. The men traveled through space for about 76 hours. At last, the big spaceship was close to the moon. Now the question asks, what date is mentioned on page 31? Well, if you look back, the date is clear to see, July 16, 1969. Next question, what happened on that date? Well, the clue is right here. In this paragraph, I just read it, so I'd like you to take a moment and pause the video and try answering this on your own. And then we can look at the answers together. Let's look at the answer. The astronauts started their trip to the moon. Did this happen before or after the Russians first sent a moon into space? Well, as we read on page 25, the Russians first sent a man into space. So that must have happened before this happened. Let's read aloud pages 32. Flying the Eagle. Neil and Buzz climbed into a small ship called the Eagle. It was made for landing on the moon. It had just enough fuel to take them to the moon and back to the big ship. Mike would wait for them on the big ship. Soon, the Eagle was on its way to the moon. It flew for about 2 hours. At last, it was very close to the surface. Then, something went wrong. The Eagle was heading straight for some rocks. Neil took charge. He steered the ship away from the rocks, but he had to hurry. The Eagle was running out of fuel. He found a safe spot to land just in time. The Eagle was on the moon. We have landed. So this page describes how the astronauts went from the big ship to the moon to a smaller ship called the Eagle. Okay, let's ask a question. What was the first thing that the astronauts did, according to the section of the article, flying the Eagle? We'll take the time to answer this question on your own. You can pause the video. Okay, I'm just going to take a look at the answer right now. Neil and Buzz climbed into the Eagle. Okay, now let's read out pages 34 and 35. Let's see. A dream come true. Back on the Earth, it was nighttime on July 20, 1969. But many people were awake. They had stayed up late to watch the astronauts on TV. The people watching were amazed. They were looking at the Eagle. It was on the moon. Then they saw Neil Armstrong. He opened the Eagle's hatch. Well, that's one of your vocabulary words, which means an opening in a ship. Okay. Or the opening through which, you can go through into the spaceship. Okay. He climbed down the ladder and took a step. For the first time, a person was standing on the moon. Neil said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Buzz came down the ladder too. Together, the two men put up an American flag. 4 days later, they came back to the Earth. The American astronauts were heroes. They were the first to land on the moon. The American astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, were the first men on the moon. They left behind a flag and footprints. You can see here, people were watching on TV. Here's a footprint that they left behind. And these are the famous words that Neil Armstrong said when he was on the moon. Okay, so let's take a look at the questions. What date is mentioned on page 34? Page 34, what date is mentioned? Oh, I see a date over here, July 20, 1969. That's the date. Okay, what happened on that date? Well, what happened? It says, back on the Earth, it was nighttime, they stayed up. They were looking at the Eagle. It was on the moon, so it looks like the Eagle was on the moon July 20, 1969. And what happened? Well, they saw Neil Armstrong climb down the ladder and took a step. Oh, so that was the date when Neil Armstrong became the first person to step on the moon. And soon after followed Buzz Aldrin. Okay, let's see what the answer is over here. Astronauts walked on the moon. Is the date before or after the date the men? Is this date before or after the date the men started their trip to the moon? July 16, 1969. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and think about it. Is this date before or after the date the men started their trip to the moon? Remember, the date the men started their trip to the moon was, as we read in page, I think it was 30. Yeah, page 30. Yeah, I think this is what the date was when they started their trip to the moon. July 16, 1969. July 16. Oh, actually, I missed this question completely. They're asking, is this date, July 20, 1969, before or after July 16, 1969, the day they started their trip to the moon? So they're trying to, let me just change this real quickly. Okay, they're just asking if this date over here, July 20, 1969, is before or after this date, July 16, 1969. Well, as you can see, July 20 comes after 16. You have to go 4 places after 16. 17, 18, 19, 20. So it must be after they started, the men first started their trip to the moon. Okay. So the article says the men returned to the Earth 4 days later. We can figure out the sequence of events and when important events happened when we have phrases such as 4 days later. If the astronauts landed on the moon on July 20 and they returned to the Earth 4 days later, what date did they return to the Earth? So you'll have to do a little bit of math over here. They landed on the moon on the 20th of July, and then 4 days later they returned to the Earth. So can you figure out what date it might have been when they returned to the Earth? Let's count 4 places after 20. So there's 21. Well, it's not even. Let's use a nice violet color to count on 4 places after 20. So 21, 22, 23, 24. 4 places after 20. So it must have been July 24 when they returned to the Earth. Let's see if we got it correct. Oh, look at that. How can we figure that out? Well, just count 4 places after. Yeah, add 4 to 20. That's what we're doing, adding 4 to 20. Count 4 places after 20. Okay, now let's read aloud the timeline in the article, pages 36, 37. Here. So what happens, this by the way, this is called a timeline. The years are given here, and then with every year accompanies a little bit of text that talks about, that mentions something important that happened in a year that we have to remember in this article. Okay, so in 1961, Yuri Gagarin, a Russian, is the first man sent to space. In 1963, Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, and Buzz Aldrin become astronauts. And then in 1966, Neil, Mike, and Buzz go to space. 1968, Neil, Mike, and Buzz are picked to go to the moon. 1969, the astronauts land on a ship on the moon. On July 20, 1969, Neil and Buzz walk on the moon. They leave an American flag there. Okay, how far did they go? How far did the astronauts go? The distance from Earth to the moon is about 240,000 miles. It would take about 6 months to drive that far on the highway. So if the distance from the Earth to the moon were connected with a highway, it would have taken 6 months to drive all the way from the Earth to the moon. Let's take a look at our questions. What is the text feature on pages 36 and 37 with the pictures and dates called? Okay, so the text feature with the this one. I just talked about this briefly. It's called a timeline, so it should be, yeah, a timeline. Okay, a timeline lists important events and the years in which they happened, all organized in sequence. You can see over here. Important events, all organized in a sequence. And a sequence is the order in which things happened. Well, the important things that happened in the order in which they happened. Look, all the numbers are in order. Since the timeline includes the years in order, we say that it is organized in chronological order. So, yeah, since the timeline is in order, follows a sequence, we call this chronological order. The thing that happens first is listed first, and the thing that happens after that is listed then, and so on. That's how it goes. We can't put something that happened later before something that happened before, then that wouldn't be chronological order. We can't put 1968 before 1961, and then 1963, and then, yeah, it would be a mess. We can't jumble these years up. We can't switch places. They have to be in this order in order to be in sequence, and that is called chronological order. What is the first year mentioned on the timeline? Well, we just took a look at it. It's 1961. According to the timeline, what happened in that year? I think Yuri Gagarin was the first Russian to go to space. Yeah, a Russian man was sent. When an article has the important events described in the order in which they happened, how do we say the article is organized? Well, there's a hint. I just talked about it a few seconds ago. Okay. We say that the article is organized in sequence. And when it follows the order of time in which they happened, it's called a chronological order. Okay. What are some of the clues in this article that helped us figure out that it is organized in sequence? Let's take a look at the answer. Okay, so if you answered any one of these, it has years in it, it has signal words like first, then last. It talks about important events in the order that they happened, which are things that I talked about just a minute ago. You would have gotten it right. Okay. Now let's pause the recording. Okay, after you've answered all the questions in this video, there's some additional activity for you, and that is putting all of these events that were mentioned in the article in order. So what you'll be doing is cutting out the pictures, cut out these pictures with the help of your learning coach or yourself using safety scissors. Okay, and then put the pictures in the order that they happen in the article. So you'll be putting them in order. You've done this before in previous lessons. Just put the pictures in order. Yeah, and glue the pictures together. Okay, and you're done with this lesson. You can go and mark it complete.